Hey everybody, welcome back to the Varied Life. Steve here, the retired hobby tech guy who is retired here in Korea. And we talk about some current events. And we're talking about this waste of DNA, Johnny Somali, Ishmael, whatever. He's not Somali. He's not a Somalian. He's actually an American citizen of Ethiopian descent. And yeah, he has made the news recently because he is a waste of space. He's kind of like that, when you have words that have meanings and then the space in between those words that mean nothing, that's this guy here. Yeah, Ishmael. Anyway, Ishmael here has come to the point of where he is a nuisance streamer. So he has gone on social media like YouTube, Kick, Rumble, and some others, and whatever. People actually pay for in real time streaming stuff and to do pranks and even the crap stuff that he does. Well, what he ended up doing is a quick little recap is he went to some other countries, caused problems, broke the law, got in trouble, has been arrested. He got arrested in Israel. He went to Japan. He did the same stuff that he's doing here in Korea. And he got arrested and he spent like 3 months in jail in Japan. And then he came to Korea because he figured, I'll just do the same thing and we'll break laws and we'll verbally assault people, we'll sexually harass, and a number of other things. Oh yeah, and then we'll play North Korean propaganda, which is against the law here in Korea. And it's interesting because Ishmael here ends up talking about how he's an agent of free speech, and it's like, that's great, but each country has their own definition of what is free speech, and obviously Johnny is just picking up that monitor of being a freedom fighter to further his streaming career, which is really in the dumps, unfortunately. He has gone to the point of where he has offended so many people, he has actually called for the extermination of all Asians. So, yeah, there's that. He wishes that North Korea presses the nuclear button to nuke South Korea. He has twerked and disrespected the comfort women's statues, which a little bit of background on that. There's statues, and they commemorate the atrocities of what happened from 1910 to 1930 or 40, something like that, where the Japanese had occupied Korea and they forced Korean women to become prostitutes, and so it's on the same level in the atrocities that occurred during the Holocaust. If you see what the Japanese did to the Koreans at that time, it is horrendous. So going up to one of these statues that is supposed to be a solemn thing. It was supposed to be for closure. He ends up twerking on them. He took off his shirt. He put baby oil. I don't know. Maybe he's been to a Diddy party. But baby oil all over himself and kissed the statues and put his hand underneath the dress of the statues. He has played recordings of bomb threats. I have a bomb on public transportation, subways, trains, things like that. He's been kicked off. So yeah, he's broken a lot of laws, and he always plays the card of, I didn't know, oh, it's my ringtone. I'm sorry, I don't know what he's saying. And unfortunately, that dog's not going to hunt. But we're going to look into this because the prison that Johnny Somali will go to here in Korea, is it a vacation paradise? Yeah, when we think of prison, and I spent time in prisons, well, actually, I spent one night in jail, but then I worked in prisons for over 11 years in medium R restricted facilities, and I actually worked in CSP, which is the Colorado State. It's the worst prison there is. I've worked a couple times there with the worst of the worst. And yeah, we think of prison, we think of San Quentin, we think of Angola, we think of, Shawshank Redemption, of where there's going to be this inmate justice. And, you would think, oh, he's going to prison in Korea. That's going to be bad. Yeah, it's not as bad as you would think. And matter of fact, when you look at it, you might be disappointed that he will go to prison here in Korea. I mean, I totally get it. I totally think that he should be responsible for his actions. I totally believe that he should be given the max sentence for all of the crimes that he's ended up doing. And you can see a list of those crimes. most accurately depicted by Legal Mindset. He has some great videos and shows where he's probably going to face maybe 7 to 10 years, depending on how many times, but a minimum of 5 years, maybe up to 10. It depends. Again, he's done things multiple times. So will they charge him for each of those separate instances? I'm not sure. But he has been arrested, according to the Korean news. My wife and I saw it. That it's going to the next step. And if you know anything about the Korean legal process, which we're going to look over a little bit, it's going to be a minute before he actually goes to trial. But all that time, he's still a waste of space. So let's check out what we have going on here. Now, this is Navigating the Korean Criminal Justice System, the Attorney's Guide. And if you're a foreigner facing criminal charges in Korea, you can gain, valuable insight. And if you break the laws in Korea, you're subject to the laws in Korea. Imagine that. What are the odds? Like any other country in the world. So, there's that. It's very different from your home country. Seeking legal advice is essential and very important because basically, here in Korea, you don't want to represent yourself. They're only a fool who hires himself as his own lawyer is the biggest fool in the room. It's going to be stressful. The Korean criminal law applies to citizens and foreigners. And it's not like you can claim, I didn't know. Ignorance is not a get out of jail free card. And unfortunately, a lot of these nuisance streamers on YouTube and streaming videos and IRLs and stuff like that, unfortunately, they make the claim, oh, it was just a prank. Oh, I didn't know. And I think people are getting to the point where they've had enough of this. And so they're looking to take the laws and not take that into account because they know that he knew what he was doing, just like other nuisance streamers. So anyway, criminal defense attorney in Korea's, if you're not permanent or long-term resident in Korea, investigative authorities will keep you under detention or under arrest through the investigation process. There's also the possibility that you could be left on your own recognizance. You still have to stay in Korea. You will not be allowed to leave, which Johnny Somali ended up trying to, say, hey, well, I got an emergency passport, and so I'm out of here. Basically, what he did is he went to the U.S. consulate or the U.S. embassy, and what he ended up doing is getting an emergency passport, which doesn't work because the Korean government took your passport, and I'm wondering if he can get in trouble for that, lying to the embassy by saying he lost his passport and so he got an emergency passport. He obviously tried to get out of the country and was rejected because they do it by your name and the number that's on your passport. So as soon as it's updated, the Korean government knows, they still know who you are. So that kind of blew up in Johnny's face. So anyway, if you've done some serious crimes, you're going to have some problems. But you could be detained or left in your own recognizance. So the problem is that you just have to tell them in the case where you're out on your own until you go to trial, is you have to give them your address. You need to keep that updated. He can still travel around. He can still do stuff, unfortunately. But I think that the Korean government just didn't want to deal with his punk ass. Anyway, you can be detained. You have to go through an investigation, and it's better to have a criminal defense attorney as earliest as possible. Now, it's interesting because for the longest time, what we've seen or heard is that Johnny did not get a defense attorney, and he is only recently, he gets a public defender, which isn't really good. And there's a stark difference between Korean law and what we have in the United States. I mean, it's not so opposite, but the procedure in which they do things is a little different. And yes, you're innocent until proven guilty, but the way that the Korean legal system works is that you get charged with a crime or there's a report that you committed a crime, the police will investigate and they'll gather up evidence and so on and so forth. And then, unless it's a really heinous crime, you can be detained during that investigation process. Then they will bring the formal charges. So more often than not, if you get to the place of where they actually charge you, for charge, they give you charge, say this is this and this and this and this. They've already done the investigative process to the point of where it's kind of like, yeah, you're pretty much guilty. And so, in other words, they want to hit a home run. They're going to do everything they can to hit that home run. Yeah, and so that doesn't look well for Johnny, because if this does go to court, which it will, and it is going to, they have their ducks in a row. And by not getting an attorney, which shows how cheap he is, and then relying on a public defender, which a public defender, he's a public defender, kind of like in the United States. You get what you pay for. Maybe he'll get a good one. Maybe he'll get a so-so one. We don't really know. But what we do know is that the prosecutor that is in this case has like over a 90% or 95% successful prosecution rate. Yeah, and that's so, Johnny's rolling the dice here that he could kind of squeeze out by saying, oh, I'm just a streamer, I didn't know, I'm a prankster, it was a joke, I'm sorry, I didn't know. All of that stuff's not going to fly. You might have heard the saying, not guilty until it's proven, or the presumption of innocence. Yes, you are. Korean criminal law has articles about it, where it says the criminal defendant shall be presumed innocent until he or she is adjudged to be guilty. But to be honest, in criminal defense attorney in Korea's experience, when a suspect arrested or detained under Korean law, you may be arrested, detained. It conveys the impression to the court that you're already guilty. We see the same thing in the United States and other countries. Because before being found guilty, one shall be arrested or detained when the investigative authorities believe there is enough evidence to justify detention or prove criminal charges. So this is very different than in the United States. So if you get arrested and detained and you're going to court, they've already done their homework, and that's why they issued the warrant for your arrest. So in the minds of the legal community here in Korea and the people in general, if you're arrested, you're pretty much done. Yeah, you're done. It's stick a fork in the turkey, you're done. It's not allowed to arrest or detain a suspect without specific standards. So again, through the investigative process, they get all the information, and then it's like, okay, we have this, 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 and this, and according to our laws, which are this, this, and this, we got it. Arrest and detention are permitted only if the legal requirements are met. When you hire an expert criminal attorney, which Johnny Ishmael, what's-his-face, has not done, they'll look into your case to see if there's any violation of the due process to free you. The problem is the Korean legal system is pretty efficient, as most things here in Korea are. And of course, this is from a criminal, attorney. They speak English and all this stuff. But it kind of goes over that. The problem is that the criminal proceedings, you can look at this. That's in Pyeongsan, the post-indictment stage, comprised of either criminal trial or summary proceedings. This includes preparatory proceedings. Participation of jury is required, and the procedures are over the conclusion of arguments, and pronouncement of the sentence is also included in this stage. Alternatively, the conclusion of arguments, a request for compensation, or a request for release on bail may each be filed. Right now, they're still under the investigation stage, and from what we saw, at least my wife and I, is that he has been arrested or detained. And the court, the wheels of justice are turning. If the prosecutor requests summary proceedings, the judge may issue a summary order or try the case in a traditional manner through a criminal trial. If a person wants to file a protest, they can do so within 7 days of the receipt of notice of summary order by submitting it in writing to the court that issued the order and request a formal trial. Then the case gets tried through a traditional trial proceeding. Preparatory proceedings consist of the order of preparatory proceedings, the written statements by the prosecutor, the rebuttal of the defense counsel, the prosecutor's response to the rebuttal, preparatory hearing of, examination of evidence and putting everything in order, the conclusion, and the start of a criminal trial proceedings. So again, the way that the Korean criminals court system is that yeah, if you're being detained, there's probably a high probability that you have done the crime. So that's why we see such high successful prosecution rates in Korea, is because they do their homework and they don't just willy-nilly just grab people off the street and give them false charges. Yeah, so it's going to be really interesting. There's this big old graph here on, the what goes where and proceedings and all of that stuff, and it's just it's interesting, but I'm not going to go through it. The interesting thing that we want to take a look at is with Johnny here is after he goes and after he gets charged and when he gets his punishment, he will go to prison. At least that's what we're hoping for. And because of the things he's done, and there's still other cases or other charges that are being investigated. So this isn't just a one-time thing where he goes to court and if he gets away, they're still doing investigations onto other charges. So he still could be in Korea for quite some time. But if these charges stick, let's say 90% success rate, I would go to say that there's a 90% chance that he's going to get some prison time. But is the prison that he's going to go to, is it going to be a vacation paradise, or is it going to be like San Quentin? Is if he drops the soap, is there going to be problems for him and with the anal gap and all of his prison pocket is going to be expanded to, I don't know. Those are the things that we think of, is that there's this prison justice that goes on. And by working in prisons for 11 years in the Colorado State Corrections, it is there. And Colorado's prisons are a little tame compared to like Angola or San Quentin or some of the, Rikers and things like that, where some really horrible prisons. But we still had some bad people in there. Rapists, murderers, pedophiles, baby rapers, arsons, drugs, gangbangers, the whole 9 yards. If you end up in prison, it's because you did something very wrong, for the most part. But for Johnny, could it be a vacation paradise? Will it be like San Quentin, or will it be more relaxed? And unfortunately, I think it's going to be a little bit more relaxed than most people think it will be. And that kind of makes people sad. So let's take a look at this. Here we are. South Korea segregates foreigners in their prisons. So yeah, that's going to be interesting. Let's see if we can blow this up a little bit. Boom! Foreign offenders and inmates in South Korea will be housed in a single dedicated prison after officials unveiled a 1,230-bed detention facility as the world's first purpose-built prison for foreign nationals. This was in 2010, and so I've known about this for a while, and, as much as... But when I start to dig deeper into this, I found out that, yeah, it's way more chill than probably what most people will think, and that will make you angry. The Cheonan Correctional Institution for Foreign Nationals, located in South Chungcheong Province, about 55 miles south of Seoul, encompasses 49 buildings with a combined 4.5 million square feet of operational space. Government converted the Juvenile Correction Service facility into a foreigners-only prison for foreigners sentenced to incarceration in Korea. During 10 years preceding 2009, the foreign inmate population increased more than 500%, from about 350 inmates to about 1,800, according to official reports. A lot of these people have done serious crimes to Korean nationals. It is very interesting. The new facilities features 238 double bunk and 120 single occupancy cells. So he'll have a cellmate, a buddy, or he might even have a single cell to himself. Yeah, it's not like prisons you would see in Laos and Cambodia and Vietnam or, South America and things like that, where prisons are horribly overcrowded and you could become somebody's plaything. And the guards wouldn't do anything. Very different here in Korea. The prison houses more than 1,500 nationals from more than 40 countries. Prior to opening, the inmates were scattered throughout the country, but now they have consolidated them. Some 600 offenders from 30 countries are already moved to the facility. Now, this is back in 2010. So we have to realize that now there's even more. Excuse me. And it's kind of interesting. In the past, inmates often had difficulty living in close quarters with Korean inmates in Gen Pop, with language barriers and cultural differences. And again, you also had the aspect of the guards. Everybody learns English here in Korea, but not everybody speaks or understands English as well as some others. It was developed in part to solve the problem of increasing tensions and incidents of conflict between native inmates and foreigners in local prisons. So if you were hoping, kind of like I did a little bit, that he would get prison justice from the inmates who are Koreans to enact their own prison justice, that's not going to happen. And it makes us sad. Many correctional officers are fluent in at least one foreign language, such as English, Spanish, Chinese, Russian, Spanish, or Vietnamese, and improved communications. That is a huge thing. Even when I worked in prisons in the United States, in Colorado, we had people that were on call for being translators, and so, that is a thing. The prison library is stocked with foreign language books, and inmates are offered satellite TV programs in English, Chinese, Russian, and Arabic. So he's going to get some TV, some cable TV, while he's in prison, in either a cell by himself or with a cellie, roommate. The prison offers educational programming and job training with classes in Korean culture to help the inmates better understand the country, the people, the country, and traditions of Korean. Inmate menu includes Korean and Western foods. They developed get this. Correction officials collaborated with university researchers to develop a facility and program model that would make it easier for inmates to adjust to live during incarceration and better assimilate into Korean society after release. That is kind of the same that all prisons, at least ones in the United States, kind of say, hey, we're here to rehabilitate inmates so that they can be better citizens when they get out. The problem is, I don't think Ishmael Johnny Somali he's not going to turn a new leaf. He's not going to get enlightenment and say, oh, I've seen the error of my ways. It's not going to happen. And I think with the softness of the Korean prison, with foreigner-only prison, it's not going to do anything for him. Here's another article that it talks about something interesting, foreigner-only prison. A class of 25 sings along to a K-pop star aided by a little ball that bounces from word to word on a big screen at the head of the class. The teacher motions her hand to her ear, inviting the convicts to sing louder. So we have little sing-alongs. Yay, let's sing along and clap our hands and yay, do little TikTok dances, which I'm sure Johnny will fit right in. The teacher, they enthusiastically oblige. Thinking that you're going to prison to do some hard time and now you're singing K-pop songs and watching TV and, having Western and Korean food. Some clap their hands, everyone moves rhythmically in their chairs. If it weren't for the prison-issued navy blue jumpsuits, it would be hard to tell them apart from other tourists in the country. The Cheonan Foreigner Prison's Good Morning Korea program. The students are all foreign convicts and touts the only foreigner-only prison in the world. Leading the song today was this, and this program's goal is to help foreign prisoners understand Korea and living in Korea. We hope that foreign prisoners spread the good image of Korea when they get back to their country. We also hope that foreign prisoners will open their minds and have smiles on their faces while taking this program. How do you think Johnny's going to fit into this prison? Do you think he's going to enthusiastically clap his hands and do little sing and TikToks and that whole thing? Or is he going to cause some problems? I wish they would stream that. Good Morning Korea is a big part of each weekday morning here. So in case you didn't know, here in Korea, Education is really big. It's kind of similar to Japan, and if you go and work in places in Korea, sometimes you'll have these motivational speeches. You'll have to do in stretching and hut one, hut two, and bending. It's a thing. So this is kind of the same thing of where it reinforces that culture that they have here, and teach prisoners the Korean language culture through songs and stories and clapping and stretching and all kinds of things. Officials feel that communication is very important and focus on teaching to improve the prison's environment. The main morning teaching point is, we are one family. Do you think Johnny's really going to latch on and grasp that one family concept? Yeah, I'm not thinking so. When the prisoners are well adapting to the classes, seem to be enjoying more now than they had in the beginning. She feels it is effective to teach Korean language and culture using fairy tales, K-pop songs, arts and crafts. Yeah. The Cheonan foreigner-only prison is open to give foreigner prisoners specialized treatment. In light of the fact that foreign prisoners have different languages and customs, we will give them humanitarian treatment according to universal values. Foreign crime has risen by 250% since 2006, though the Korean Institute of Criminology reported in 2007 that foreign crime rate in Korea was 1.4% compared with the 3.5% among Korean citizens. And that has probably changed over the years because we've had a lot of people come into Korea, a lot of foreigners. You have people that are on work visas. You have people that came on vacation visas and just overstayed, and so they're illegal immigrants. And they get caught committing crimes and so on and so forth. I would say that number is probably up by now because, again, this was from 2010. There's about 1,500 foreign inmates from 42 countries. On paper, it sounds like cultural mosaic of lawbreakers, but in reality, the inmates are 74% Chinese, including Taiwanese. At the time of the tour, there were 20 Americans and 1 Canadian. Of the approximate 200 Korean prisoners being housed there, the guards said that 100 are awaiting trial and 100 serve as kitchen cleaning staff, which is kind of similar to what I saw in the prisons in the United States in Colorado where I worked at. You would have inmates work at the kitchens and do certain things. So here in Korea, they have the Korean inmates given a job to work as food prep at this prison here. But the majority of them, 74% at this time, back then, are Chinese, and then 20 Americans and 1 Canadian. The prison focuses on keeping the inmates busy through different activity and programs. Through a typical week, the schedule starts at 8 a.m. and ends at 5, so basically a 9 to 5 job. Inmates spend weekends and holidays within their cells. During the tour, prisoners were playing sports, learning gardening, how to cut hair, in addition to the Dongguk University program. Besides exercise, Cheonan breaks its work into vocational skill training and factory work production. There are things where inmates will go and work on farms and do things like that. The hope for the numerous vocational training programs is to prepare prisoners to re-enter society as successful citizens. Do you think Johnny's gonna be a successful citizen when he gets out of Korean prison? I don't think so. It's going to be very interesting. Different work situations have led some to complain about the usefulness of our program. Factory work is another option in prison. Inmates make both contractable beds and fish noodles and odang. Walking around the prison grounds feels surprisingly relaxed given the reality of the location. Because Cheonan was a juvenile correctional facility, it has more of a school-like feel. During the tour, murals depicting nature scenes, remnants of the juvenile prison, no, said the guards. The university art professors were brought in to paint them. Pasted on each stairwell and above many of the doors are slogans, the past can't be changed, but the future can always be altered. Or another phrase, a clear conscience is a good pillow, are messages that are in English and Chinese. Cell blocks are painted in pastel colors with clouds on them. Now, we actually saw some of this in the prisons that I worked at, where there's actually studies have been done showing that certain colors will evoke and certain emotions, and so the pastel colors and having clouds and leafy, nice nature scenes had crept into the United States Colorado Department of Corrections. And it's funny because the inmates don't really care. With the exception of the large walls and jumpsuits, everything seems to be painted in light tones. The cells themselves are 6.48 meters square for one person and 15.48 meters for five. Each cell has a TV with pre-approved programming for the inmates' home countries, and snacks such as apples and ramens are permitted to be kept in the cells themselves. Each cell has the ability to be monitored electronically, but permission has to be obtained from the warden and a valid reason has to be provided. Oh, wow, that's kind of interesting. Seems to be a little bit different than what we saw in the United States. But even in the United States and the Colorado prisons where I worked at, there were some concerns. If you wanted to get electronic observation or audio recordings into a certain cell, basically the warden just had to give the word and say, hey, just do this, and this is the reason why. It was easy to do. But yeah, overseeing the prison is a group of about 200 guards, which is about that's about similar to what we had in the Colorado Department of Corrections. At a prison that I worked at, one of the prisons I worked at Fremont Correctional Facility, you had a 1,600 bed facility, and anywhere from 200 to about 300 people of staff would be working during shift, with graveyard shift being the least amount of people. Some guards speak foreign languages. They don't have weapons on them, but they say if trouble breaks out, they're close at hand, which is kind of the same thing in most prisons. Foreign inmates are actually easier to handle than Korean inmates. They listen more. When asked if the cultural differences between the guards and the prisoners, they said that they were fears initially, but the guards hesitated to work at a foreigner-only prison because of that question, but it has relatively gone smoothly since then. So it goes on and it talks about, some more stuff here. Very, very interesting. But here is a look at the prison. So let's take a look and see how hard Johnny's going to have it here in this prison. Here we end up, they're doing some little bit of gardening. They have their own classes.
이 수용자들이 코리안 드림이 실패한 것이 아니고 또 다른
And basically what he ends up, he's talking about how, they have English, they have translators, and some of the programs that they end up having. We'll just kind of fast forward. They get a huge library of books, kind of reminiscent of what I saw in the Colorado Department of Corrections. Paintings on the walls, pretty nice facility. I mean, does that look hard? Do you think Johnny's going to be doing some hard stuff? Now we get to where the inmates are actually being housed. And that's what you end up seeing. So that's a little cubby there. I think that's a 1 for 5. You can see a row of cells with the bars on the windows. It looks like they don't have a latrine in the cells, so they have like a gang latrine. But yeah, it doesn't look that hard, does it? Yeah, it doesn't look that hard. When you look at some of the things that we end up having. Cells, kind of normal, key lock, electronic locks, a little tray slot. Doesn't really look that, doesn't look that hard. I mean, I was in jail when I was a juvenile, and the juvenile jail that I went to in New Mexico looked a lot harder than that. So, it's, I don't think Johnny's going to be serving an extreme hard prison sentence. It's not going to be like, the old prison movies that we would see on TV. It's not going to be like Angola. It's not going to be like San Quentin or Rikers in New York or down in Texas where they live in tents and wear pink jumpsuits, and they're real hard on the inmates. No, we're seeing that, the facilities there, aside from the cells may be in a little bit worse condition as compared to the prisons that I was at, but almost the same. In the United States, when I worked in the Colorado Department of Corrections, the prisons that I worked in, you would have a bed, and then you'd have a bunk bed, and then you'd have an area with like a table and a swing out little metal chair that you could sit on, and then you had some shelving. So, depending on how many people live in there, and many of the cells had their own toilet and sink. These don't. There were some other, when I worked at Territorial, which is the oldest prison in Colorado, it was a prison before Colorado was a state. The cells there were a little bit worse off depending on which cell house that you went to. Many of those didn't have, toilets and sinks in their own cell, but you had to go out into a gang latrine. But yeah, it doesn't look hard. It doesn't look hard at all. And if every day that you go doing, you're singing K-pop songs and clapping your hands and, doing that whole thing, I don't think prison is going to be as hard as what people think it will be for Johnny Somali, especially in a foreigner-only prison with Korean and Western foods, cable TV, vocational programs and so on and so forth. It's not going to be like what you think it's going to be. I think it's actually going to be easier for Johnny than what he's doing now, where he has to look over his shoulder. And the fact that it's in a foreigner-only prison, I don't think there's going to be much prison justice, let's say, if he goes to a foreigner-only prison, as if he went to a prison that had a lot of Korean nationals who could extract that prison justice. I think that's also another reason of why they put foreigners in a foreigner-only prison, is so that would not happen. So for the people that are like myself, and I do believe that Johnny should be punished to the fullest extent of the law, but, after working in prisons in Colorado and seeing vocational programs, recreational, food, on-site medical, libraries, cable TV, all of these things, people had their tablets and listening to music, videos, radio station there at the prison. Really, for a lot of people in the inmates that went to prison, it was better for them than when they were out on the streets. And that's why a lot of people, I knew a lot of old inmates, old cons that were like, I'm here for 10, 20 years. This is my retirement program. Because if I get out, I'm a felon, I'm an ex-con, and I can't get a good job. I can't afford housing. And so many of them resorted to crimes that would keep them in prison for the rest of their lives. Case in point, there was an old con that I knew who had spent 25, almost 30 years of his sentence, and he was getting paroled. And he had been institutionalized to the point of where he was like, yeah, I don't even know what a cell phone is. There's no way. And as he got closer and closer to his parole where he was getting out, he started acting up. And so what he eventually ended up doing was attacking staff and doing assault on staff, which would lead to, I think it was like 5 or 10 years. I think it was like 10 years because he did multiple assaults and whatever. And so he got recharged so that he would eventually die in prison. But talking with him and talking with other older cons that weren't ever going to get out and had committed crimes to stay in prison, they said, hey, we get 3 meals a day. I get medical. I get dental. Granted, it's not top-notch medical or dental, but it's life-saving. They have vocational programs. They have a library. They have music. They have, TV, radio, cable. They could rent movies and the whole 9 yards. It's, and the weight pile, exercise, gym, all kinds of educational and teaching programs. You can go back to school. You can learn all kinds of creative art and design and architecture and even computer stuff there in Colorado. And then the vocational trades that you could do: welding, you could do fiberglass production, you could do, furniture building. There's all types of things that they could do. One old con told me, he says, I'm living my best life now in regards to how I live my life. He says, if I get out, I will have none of this. He goes, I will be homeless. So some inmates make that choice. But for Johnny, and let's say he gets 5 to 10 years, excuse me, let's say he gets 5 to 10 years. I think Legal Mindset has said in a video that it looks like the minimum he will get is 5 years. It doesn't look like it's going to be a hard 5 years. In all honesty, obviously he won't have a cell phone, but I think he'll still be an ass. But I think he'll come to the realization that if he doesn't play the game, and I don't know what type of corrective action that they have. So if you have an inmate that acts out, I think in all honesty, what they will do, if he acts out to the point, they will give him his own cell so that he's not a problem. So in other words, he might just play the bad guy and be enough of a pain in the ass that they give him his own cell just to alleviate, and without, he's causing so many problems with a cellmate. He was in a cell with 4 other people and it just wasn't working out. So they moved him to another one, and maybe that'll be his goal, is to just be a big enough pain in the ass to get his own cell and to be really comfortable in a Korean prison. That's my guess. I don't think Johnny will come to enlightenment. I don't think Johnny will come to a place where he will realize the error of his ways. And by going to a Korean prison is not what a lot of people expect. Even in the United States, there is a lot of people that, get this idea of prisons of, don't drop the soap, and, your prison pocket is going to be, look up prison pocket. It's disgusting. But in all honesty, when I tell people what I saw when I worked in the Colorado Department of Corrections, people are like, what? Seriously? They get all that? They get it, you can work for your GED, you can get a college degree in some cases, you can get vocational training, welding and furniture building, and, so the whole, making license plate, which actually in territorial, they do have a license plate manufacturing there. So that is really a thing. But usually to get those jobs, you have to have a pattern of behavior that shows you are a good model inmate, and then you can get more benefits and better working conditions and higher paying jobs, because they actually get paid in the Colorado Department of Corrections for the jobs that they do. And then they use that to buy canteen and food and so on and so forth. I can't find anything that says that the Korean prison system will pay their inmates for the work that they do, or is that's just included and that's just part of their prison sentence, is that you work for nothing. You just work to be a productive citizen. So yeah, even if Johnny does go to prison here in Korea, in Cheonan, with the foreigner-only prison, we're looking at either he's going to have 4 roommates, cellmates, or he's going to be double bunked, him and a cellie, a roommate, or he's going to be in a single cell. We know that they have Western and Korean style foods. We know that there's a huge library, that they have cable TV, that they do, morning programs of clapping and singing the K-pop songs and all of that, and exposed to Korean culture every day, Monday through Friday, with weekends off in which they can do whatever they want. When people see what actually goes on in some prisons, they're disheartened that it's not hard, that it's almost like they're being cheated some way because the prison life is so easy for a lot of people. Now, again, that's subjective because it depends on which prison you go to. If you go down to, Angola in Louisiana, you don't want to go there. You go down to Texas, tent city, living outside in 110-degree heat, doing chain gang work and stuff like that, or, San Quentin or Rikers. Yeah, very different prison experiences. But we tend to think that prison is going to be hard and nasty, but it seems that Johnny's prison that he's going to go to is not going to be hard. It's not going to be nasty. It could be a vacation paradise for him compared to some of those other prisons and the ideas. Recently, there was some people, I think it was, a couple people from Taiwan that went to Cambodia and caused some problems there, nuisance streamers, and they made up this whole story of that they ended up being captured, or one guy was captured and forced to work, and it ended up, it was all a lie, but it involved, excuse me, it involved the mayor, it involved police, and they did send out search parties, so they eventually got convicted of deep fake videos or faking videos that they were abducted and falsely imprisoned, and so they themselves ended up going to prison. But the prisons in Cambodia are truly reprehensible. And so those people will truly be paying for their crimes, whereas the prison that Johnny Somali is going to go to, probably not like that. Matter of fact, I pretty much guarantee it's not going to be like a Cambodian prison. With a foreigner-only prison, singing K-pop songs and, learning the culture, I think Johnny will still be a problem because he is so full of himself and he's so egotistical, and he's, in my opinion, he's such a waste of the human gene pool of being a nuisance streamer, a prankster, and pushing the boundaries, claiming to be a free speech, agent for free speech. But really, he's going to go to prison, but I don't think it's going to be hard as people think. So, yeah, living here in Korea, this kind of interests me, but maybe way back in the day, before there was a foreigner-only prison, he might get some prison justice. But here, with the majority of them, if the stats are still true, that 74, 75% of the people in the foreign-only prison are Chinese or Taiwanese, and you have some other smatterings from some stuff I found, but nothing official, like Thailand, Philippines, what was some other ones? Vietnam, Malaysia, but the big, and I don't think I saw Russians on there, but there is a lot of Russians here in Korea, and it's hard to find up-to-date information on the makeup of the prisons here in Korea. But from what I found so far, it doesn't look good if you're expecting to see Johnny go through some drop-the-soap prison justice. Yeah, if he does some time here, if he does years, it's not going to be hard as everybody thinks. And yeah, he'll do some time, then he'll leave. But the best thing that I think that after that is if Korea bans him for life from ever coming back to Korea. And I think what other countries should do preemptively is people like Johnny Somali, Ishmael, he hates that name, by the way. And I feel sorry for his parents. I really feel sorry for his parents, because you imagine it's like, as with most immigrants, you move to a country because you're poor and you're destitute, you come to the United States to get a better life, you make a better life from yourself, and then your child does this. Yeah, you can't brag about that. You probably disowned your son, and at least I would, if he ended up doing what Ishmael does here on the world stage, and he doesn't even have that many followers. A lot of his money comes through Kick and Rumble. It used to be Instagram and YouTube, but I think he's been banned from those. Matter of fact, he was banned from TikTok, and he threatened that he would go back to the Comfort Girl statues and do worse atrocities than what he did before, which he apologized for, which I said wasn't a real apology, because he did the same thing in Japan. He apologizes, but then turns right around and does the same BS. He doesn't mean it. He doesn't mean anything that he says in regards to apologies. I do believe he's narcissistic. I do believe he's an idiot. I do believe he's egotistical and think he's all that in a bag of chips, but he's not. And luckily enough, karma has not raised its ugly head for him to run into somebody that will put him in his place. There was the time here in Korea where that ex-special forces soldier came and kind of roughed him up, beat him up a little bit, but he hasn't really gotten what he's dished out. And I think karma should rear its ugly head and, teach him a lesson. But we'll see what karma does. So anyway, what do you think of the information that I found in regards to the foreigner-only prison here in Korea, in Cheonan? You think it's going to be some hard time? You think he's going to have to, keep the soap on a rope so he doesn't drop it? Or is it going to be kind of a cakewalk vacation paradise for him compared to other prisons? Put it in the comment section down below. So yeah, that's living here in Korea is interesting, and seeing what's going on. The interesting part will be the other charges that Johnny Boy ends up getting. If he gets charged for disseminating North Korean propaganda, which he has done. He played like the North Korean national anthem in public venues like their subways and transit systems on a loudspeaker, a JBL loudspeaker. It's like 7 to 10 years for that, and he's done it a couple of times. So I don't know. Yeah, and the bad thing is that he has recorded all of his crimes. How stupid do you? The world's stupidest criminal. He ranks right up there in the top 10 because he recorded himself doing these crimes, and then he said, "I didn't do nothing. I'm innocent. I don't know what it's saying." And it's like, but if you watch his streams, which have been recorded by millions of people around the world, and many people have recorded all of his streams, downloaded them, sent them to Korean prosecutors as evidence, and then Johnny tried to delete all of his stuff, but once it's on the internet, it's there. So yeah, him deleting and is kind of like, Hillary Clinton taking the phones and the tablets and smashing them with a hammer. No, the evidence is already out there. Smashing the Yeah, Johnny's an idiot and so is Hillary. So anyway, that's what we got going on. Like and subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate that. If you want to buy me a coffee, link in the description box down below. And with that said, there are some people that have bought me copies. These people here, they're awesome. They have much respect for them because they bought me coffees, and you can do so if you want. But at least like and subscribe to the channel. Again, put what you think in the comments in the prison. Is this Korean prison going to be hard for Johnny, or is it going to be a walk in the park? Love to hear what you think. And if you have other information about the prison or insight into the Korean justice system, put that down there too. With that said, I'm going to go make a coffee. So we'll see you on the next video. Peace.